Hey friends, Irene Lyon here. Welcome to this video, to this YouTube channel, and to this world of healing trauma, nervous system health, and all things neuroplasticity. This is a question I get a lot, and it goes something like this. What does it mean when I wake up in the middle of the night, or I wake up first thing in the morning and my heart is pounding, or I have anxiety, or I feel absolute fear, panic, terror, everything is really bad. So typically when someone is saying this to me, and I have experienced this myself as well, there is a physiological response that is automatic, hence autonomic nervous system, that is deciding to just take over. And I'm gonna make one sort of assumption here, and that is that when you are sleeping in your home, you really do not have a real threat going on in your house, next to you, or outside. There aren't bombs going off. So let's just assume that that is the case and that you are experiencing something that is completely unconscious, automatic, and it is knocking on your door saying, hello, we're feeling this, pay attention to us now. Okay, what I need to talk about first is this concept of anxiety, this concept of our fight and flight responses. This is the sympathetic nervous system. It is the one that does get us out of harm's way, that does bring on the response that something is not right in our environment and we need to get the heck out. If you've been following me for a little bit, you will know that I talk about early childhood experiences, early what we would call developmental trauma, that isn't necessarily big abuse and physical abuse and being mishandled and treated poorly. There are some things that are so common in our human existence that, especially in the Western world, that we are subjected to and we survive as youngsters. And then later in life, even though we have a pretty safe environment and we are a member of society and our health is relatively good, we will have these bouts of waking up in the middle of the night and feeling like the world is going to end. One of the things that we have seen that was quite popular back in the day when I was young, and maybe when you were young, and maybe when your parents were young and our grandparents, is that babies were left to cry themselves to sleep. It's called cry it out, or CIO. We now know without any argument that this is not good for human infant development. It puts the little one into a massive, massive panic, stress, survival response. And then because they are so wee and little, they don't know how to come down naturally. They don't know how to self-soothe themselves and calm themselves. They are too little. They are pre-verbal. All they're feeling is somatic terror and fear, and no one is there. They're in this dark room, and no one's coming to get me, and it's terrifying. But because at that level, at that infant level, we are immature, we then just snap into the next survival response after fight and flight, which is freeze, or the shutdown response. It's a part of the parasympathetic nervous system that pretty much says, no bueno, nothing is happening, nobody is coming to get me, I better just shut down and numb out and go to sleep. And a lot of these babies that were subjected to that got used to this, and sooner or later what occurs is this kiddo is like, no one's here, and they get faster and better at just passing out. This level of shutdown is not healthy for the physiology. Now what's interesting is if that little one, and here's the thing, parents just didn't know, and pediatricians even didn't know, and some of them still advocate for that. But if we are raised in a fairly healthy environment, we have good food, we get exercise, we have a good education system, relatively speaking, we have parents that do love us when we are awake and take care of us and, you know, put band-aids on our boo-boos and all these things. If we had that upbringing, chances are we'll have an okay, pretty okay life, if that's the one insult that occurred to us. But what occurs, and I'm seeing this occur more often, and I'm going to do a sidebar topic right now. Right now in 2020, so I'm dating this video, there's a lot more awareness, a lot more education. It's what we do here on the nervous system, on how somatic stress gets trapped in the system. We didn't even have this conversation 5 years ago, 10 years ago, certainly not 30 years ago. So now what's occurring is we are all collectively waking up. Our nervous systems are waking up and saying, whoa, that wasn't okay. I shouldn't have been treated like that when I was young, and now I'm an adult. And that old terror, here's the thing, it doesn't just dissolve with time. And when we become more safe, more aware, and more somatically conscious, we will actually feel these stored, trapped, adrenalized fight and flee survival responses more. So if you're new to this work, or maybe you're old to this work and this is starting to occur, it's actually, hate to say it, but it's a good sign, because it shows that that old toxicity is literally bubbling up to the surface. It's knocking on your door and it's waking you up in the middle of the night. So this is one explanation for why we might have these unexplained panic attacks that come out of nowhere. It's something that has occurred to me. It's occurred to many of my clients, my students, my friends, my colleagues. It's part of the game of healing trauma at this deep nervous system level. Now, another reason, we'll say this is the second reason, not that one is more important than the other, but another reason that we can have this abrupt awakening at night, if we have had early traumas that revolve around surgery, anesthesia, having an accident where we are in terror and scared, and then we go into shutdown, and then we come out of that, but no one is there to help move and heal that event, which I'm gonna guess most of us haven't had that happen because we're just learning how to do it now in history. So if we had had some kind of early event, myself, I had something occur when I was 5. It was a tonsillectomy. I don't remember anything good about that experience. None of the popsicles that you get afterwards. I don't remember going home with my parents. I vividly remember being left in the hospital bedroom with a very mean nurse who threw me on my front and stabbed me in my butt with a sedative. It hurt. I can still feel it now in a strange way. It doesn't trigger me, but the memory is there. When I started to work on my own stuff, and this has been going on, I was 5, I'm now 44. Every now and again, and not so much now, but years ago, I would have these unexplainable attacks of this adrenaline. Didn't make any sense. It might have been that experience. It could have been something else. What we need to do in those instances is to be with that intensity, be with that anxiety. I don't like to call it anxiety. I like to call it survival stress. There's a weird connection with anxiety. It's survival stress. It's your biology. It's your system saying, hey, we never dealt with that surgical trauma. We never dealt with being put under anesthesia and being terrified because nobody was there. And we're here to help you move that out of your system. When these instances happen in the middle of the night or first thing in the morning, they get worse if we fear our own physiological response. I'm going to say that one more time. It gets worse. It gets positively reinforced if we fear our own physiological responses. If we can feel them and be with them, it doesn't mean it's just going to disappear. We might need to ride that wave a little bit so that we can properly come out of that intensity and then go down the deactivation of the nervous system. I keep doing that with my hand. If you think about that baby I was telling you about that was crying itself to sleep, it's literally having this stress response going up, 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 intensity, 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 screaming, crying, and then poof, it shuts down. It just goes into shutdown, into this freeze. So what we want to do when we're feeling these things bubbling up, I like to call them sometimes these little gremlins from past, they're coming up. We want to treat them differently. We want to treat them with a little more cognition, a bit more maturity, and know that this is going to come down if we can be with them in a more gentler, more curiosity-based, more observant way. And then some of the basics that I teach my students, connect to the ground. If you're in bed, it sometimes helps to flick the light switch on, to see where you are and actually speak out loud. I'm here, I'm in my bed, this is okay, everything's safe. You might need to get up. You might need to, if there's a lot of adrenaline, actually walk on the spot. In the past, when I've had these things happen, I've run on the spot. I've done some just little shakes, nothing to override what I'm feeling. I want to still feel that intensity, but if we can gently be with it, stay connected. This is where I am. Here I am. Maybe you get a drink of water. You just do something to keep the ride going without it being overwhelming to the point where you have to pass out and disconnect. The moment we disconnect from that quality, it drives back into the system for another day. So, to go back to the original question, which was, what I get a lot is, what does it mean, or what's happening when I wake up in the middle of the night or I wake up in the morning and my heart is just racing? One of the reasons this occurs is due to these old traumatic survival stress physiology responses, namely those fight and flight responses of the sympathetic nervous system stuck in your system, and they are trying to get out and assert themselves so that they can essentially hit the nervous system thermostatic reset and come down and deactivate naturally, as opposed to getting stuck again in that shutdown response. How we relate to ourselves in such instances will make all the difference in the world. This is what it means to become your own medicine. In the past, in our historical past, we see these things as something to fix, as something to get rid of, as something to numb out, to avoid, to distract. We want to start changing that way that we see these responses and know that they're there for a very good reason, probably because we were too young and immature to deal with them when we were infants. When we were infants, we had no ability to even know what was going on, right? Before we can speak and make cognition of the world, this is called pre-verbal trauma. It is something that is stored in the somatic system, which is why when it comes out in the middle of the night, we may not even have emotion with it. It's just pure terror or pure panic, pure fear. And that's because that is actually what it is. This whole idea that fear doesn't exist and face your fears, and it doesn't do it justice. We do need to face them, but in a way that is engaging, curious, and speaks to them gently, rather than telling them to piss off and go away for another time or to numb them out. I hope this has been useful. I know that this is a topic that is being talked about a lot more. And as I mentioned, I think because our collective consciousness as humans is being tuned to this part of our physiology, more of us are going to start to feel these qualities in our system. I can pretty much guarantee that most of us living in this Western world have had some instance when we were young where there was that shutdown response. I'm sure there are some exceptions out there, but in the Western world, in this industrialized world where we put babies in cribs and left them to sleep by themselves and told little kids to suck it up and to not cry and to not take care of kids when they go into the surgical arena and they go under for anesthesia, all these things, we're getting better at dealing with this stuff, but most of us living alive now, we had to survive that. Many of us have thrived even with that. And that means that this is going to start to bubble up so that we can heal it. When we heal this, we're not just healing ourselves, we're healing the entire human collective. Thank you so much for being here, and we will see you next time.